Welcome to Moko Plays Kerbal Space Program 2. This is the start of a brand new series with Kerbal 2, which just came out into early access last week. We're coming pretty much from the off here. I have been through some of the tutorials and done a couple of quick test flights, but really I haven't learned anything that you don't pick up within the first hour or two with the game. And for a little bit of background, the first Kerbal Space Program was a game that I was always kind of fascinated by from a distance. I looked back at my Steam library prior to starting this, and I think I was down as having something like 3.5 hours played in it, which sounds about right. So really didn't even scratch the surface of that. So if you are here looking for some pro strats, some really, controlled and well thought through gameplay and someone with a good understanding of astrophysics, then I am afraid you are in very much the wrong place, and I would encourage you to look elsewhere. But if you are, welcome to come on this journey with me to learn by doing and have some fun with this game from pretty much square one. Then let's take a dive in here. We are, as I say, we're in early access here, so things really aren't as fleshed out as I'm sure they will get within this game here. We've just got sandbox stuff going on here. But for today, we're going to review a couple of the key tutorial elements, and then try and do some simple stuff like get off the ground without blowing ourselves into a million fiery little pieces, and maybe get to the point where we can do some orbiting. We are Moko Plays, and let's get started here. Alright, so here we are in the training center, which is the game's tutorial section. I did run through all of the first couple of modules here on another save, but I think it's worth revisiting some of this stuff. I didn't want the first episode to be purely running through tutorials. Lots of it is just stuff like, how do you control and turn the camera and stuff like that while you're building, which doesn't necessarily make for great viewing. And there's some pretty long loading screens in here as well. But some of these video tutorials do a really good job of explaining some of the core concepts of the game, I think, and they're absolutely things that you kind of need to understand to play, to watch, to follow along. Like this isn't a game that you can just fumble your way to success with. It really does seem like you need to actually learn some real science to get remotely good. So let's take a look at a couple of these before we get our hands on and do some flying. I will say, while this is loading, I am 100% here for this aesthetic. I don't know if there's a name for this kind of, this very 70s, the bold colours and stuff like that. To me it feels very World of Sport or whatever. Oh, I'll shush.
So you want to get to space. Have you tried rockets? Rockets use fuel and engines to create thrust, which propels them forward. When a fuel tank is empty, it is dropped to stay as lightweight as possible, allowing the rocket to go even faster. These tanks, as well as other expendable parts of a rocket, are called stages. Different stages do different things. Often the first stage is very powerful.
So I did at least know, like, this much. You can consider my knowledge of space travel and space exploration to be maybe in line with like the average 7-year-old, if they're a 7-year-old who's got a bit of interest and has done a little reading up on what NASA do. But even just like kind of the diagram and stuff that they show there does a pretty decent first explanation as to like what is this all about. And yeah, just the cartoony style, the writing and the humor is more hit than miss, definitely. Let's lots of the aesthetic of stuff like the loading screens and the settings menu is like an IDE, and it's just like I'm really here for all of it. It's very, you don't see a ton of stuff doing this as well. So yeah. let's go back to training and have a look at some of this second module here. So just as a kind of quick recap then, they talk you through just launching, hitting go from the launch pad. They talk you through how to use the vehicle assembly building and some of the camera controls and what staging it is, which we'll kind of cover as we're going and that sort of thing. Some of the key controls, and then bits of stuff here about decoupling and how to control staging and that sort of thing. So we're right at this point in the tutorial where it's going to talk us through like how to actually, aside from just going straight up and then falling straight back down, how do we do any more than that, right? How do we orbit? So let's jump into this.
Missing the ground. If you want to visit space for more than a couple of minutes, you'll need to get to orbit. An object is in orbit when it's moving sideways so quickly that even as gravity causes it to fall, it keeps missing the ground. As long as that object isn't slowed down by anything, it follows the same path every time it goes around the body it's orbiting. Forever. If that object is a Kerbal, it is recommended that they bring lots of snacks. So since your goal is to move horizontally at a high speed, why not launch sideways? On Kerbin, the atmosphere is like a thick soup. You waste a lot of fuel trying to fly through it horizontally. By launching vertically, you cut through the thickest part of the atmosphere as quick as possible. Most orbital rockets begin tilting toward the horizon soon after they leave the launch pad. This maneuver, called a gravity turn, uses the planet's gravity to turn the ship and reduces the amount of fuel needed to achieve a stable orbit. When launching near the equator, your gravity turns should point toward the east, since your vehicle gets a free boost from the planet's rotation. Thanks, planet! Once a vehicle is moving quickly enough that its arc will take it above the atmosphere, it shuts down its engines and coasts to space. Once it nears the top of that arc, the vehicle needs to fire its engines a second time to keep itself from falling back down to the planet. Doing this turns that arc into a nice big circle. Congratulations! You've missed the ground.
Alright, so let's jump into the last couple of lessons here. So then they talk to you about, you know, decoupling and how to make sure you're staging properly and that sort of thing. And then we get into using the nav ball and gravity turning and stuff. So let's jump in and take a look at that. Alright, so in this flight we're going all the way to orbit. We'll walk through the process of launching, executing a gravity turn to get moving sideways, coasting to orbital altitude, and then doing a final burn at the top of the arc to establish a stable orbit. That sounds pretty good. Let's talk about the nav ball, which is this thing down here. The nav ball shows our vehicle's orientation relative to the horizon, so it's blue on top and brown on the bottom. Right now we're pointing straight up, so all we see is blue. However, if we were to turn the rocket, we would see some brown on there. There's also like degree markers and stuff on here that kind of help us to understand how we're positioned. At launch, we want all our engines at maximum thrust, so with this 0% here is our throttle. Solid fuel boosters have no setting other than full throttle, so this control here only controls on this vehicle, this liquid fuel engine, and not these four solid fuel boosters. All of this is like preset design and stuff, by the way. This is still very handheld tutorial. Main engine's throttles in our control. Okay, so yeah, we can just go like that to turn it all the way up. Right, plus spacebar or click the go button to launch. So that's going to start us on stage 1 here, and then space or go controls our staging beyond that, and we want to make sure we're timing that stuff right. Oh, let's give it a go. Let's go to space. So this stage has our solid fuel engines as well as our liquid fuel kind of main thruster there in the middle. Solid fuel engines are nearly out. about that in a sec, I think. There we go. Alright, the solid fuel boosters are empty. Let's drop them. Press spacebar or click the go button to activate the radial decoupler stage. This is something that I kept completely messing up while I was going through here. In my head, space is pause and unpause, because that's true for so many games, especially stuff that I've played a fair bit of, like, you know, CK3 and 2.0 Hospital and that sort of thing. I really have to fight the temptation to hit space here to unpause, but I'm not going to do it. Instead, I'm going to come back to here. And then I'm going to press space to decouple, so those solid fuel boosters aren't going to weigh us down anymore. Alright, it's time to start your gravity turn. A gravity turn uses the pull of a planet's gravity to help bend your vertical ascent into a horizontal arc. It's the first step to entering orbit. For our first flight into orbit, we're going to start a gravity turn up where the air is thin at an altitude of around 10,000 meters, which is nearly where we are. So the atmosphere indicator here shows that we're kind of beyond the lowest stage and getting into thinner air here. To show you where to end the rocket, I've placed a target marker on your nav ball, so it wants us to turn to the right, which I guess is east. So yeah, let's do that. Oh, we paused again. Right, so I'm just what am I doing? Pitching or yawing? One of those terms. Holding D to turn us to the right. And there we go. So we're at this kind of 45-degree-ish angle, which we started that turn about 10,000 meters. Well, I hope this tutorial hasn't bugged out on me. I did have a couple of those kind of bug out early on. Alright, anyway, that's done, so I'm going to stage now to get rid of that. Yeah, that tutorial's not going to catch up with us, I'm afraid. This is part of the peril of doing things in early access. Alright, why don't we I think if we mess up all of our staging here, let's do this. It should give us a prompt to restart. No? Alright, let's just go back to the training center and we'll retry that then. Alright, take 2. Let's not do any pausing and stuff. Let's just run through it and hope it keeps up with us. So, set the throttle to 100. Oh, Z. There we go. Alright, press spacebar, click go to launch. Let's. Okay, solid engines are nearly burnt out. First we need to get 10,000 meters. Oops, there we go. Alright, we're going to yaw towards the east. That's what it's called. Yawing. Pitching is forward and back. Yawing is side to side. Going to yaw towards the east so the target marker is in the center of the nav ball. Your vessel nav ball should look like this. Okay, let's give that a go then. So it is a little unresponsive sometimes, like I'm holding D down here and I'm not sure if that's just because I'm getting like pretty poor frame rate or what, or if it actually is like a mechanic that you can't just make a completely smooth turn like that. Anyway, we're keeping going until this stage is out of fuel. And now, so let's stage that. Alright, we're on our way to orbit. We can make gravity turns more efficient by starting to tilt soon after liftoff. Adjusting course with a series of small corrections instead of one big one is more fuel efficient, but that requires stability. So we can always do what we did today, which is go straight up to about 10,000 meters and then turn. Cool, let's jump into the next one. Alright, this is where things maybe start to get a little bit more complicated and I am likely to get confused. Right now, we're on a ballistic trajectory. If no further adjustments are made, our rocket will eventually fall back down to the ground. Our objective is to turn this arc into an orbit. The process of turning your trajectory into a circular orbit is called circularization. Partial credit to the rocket people on that one, it does have the word circle in it, but it's really hard to say. One of the running jokes from the tutorials is whether rocket scientists name things sensibly or not. From planning and executing, we can go into the map view. So we've been in the flight view until now, where we see our rocket relatively close, but as we start to do some celestial navigation, we're going to spend more time in this map view. The blue arc is our vehicle's current trajectory, the path the rocket will follow if we don't make any more changes. That makes sense? Our goal is to make that arc into a circular orbit. After you've coasted nearly to the top of the arc, we're going to point forward and then ignite our engine. If we time that burn right, we'll never quite get to the top of the arc, as it'll keep widening in front of us until it wraps all the way around the planet. So this AP is the top of the arc, so we want to get near it and then burn so that we never actually quite hit our highest points. Alright? Let's break that down. The top of our arc has a helpful tag. It's the apoapsis, I believe, which for us is 156,000 meters. We're going to max out our throttle before we pass that point. Paused. Want to go faster in the direction we're already moving. So the direction we're already moving is prograde, so we don't have to manually turn ourselves here. We can just use this control to go prograde. We're all lined up and ready to go. Next step is max the throttle. So I press Z. We have maxed throttle there now. And you can see that our orbit is expanding there. And it'll be like kind of slow at first, and then it'll really speed up and go all the way around. So we're still on a collision course right now. We're burning out full throttle, facing in the direction of travel, and that arc is expanding. Pretty soon we're no longer going to be colliding with the planet. There we go, we have a full orbit. Oh, that whooshed right past, okay. So basically we have our apoapsis here, which is the new highest point. We have the periapsis here, which is the lowest point of the orbit. And doing maneuvers at these various points make a change in the arc. Right, cut the throttle, press X, and we go back down to 0. And we're in orbit. Neat. So if we don't do anything else, we'll just keep circling the planet here, because that's a stable orbit, I think. I think the only thing that might have rushed past here, or maybe it's about to tell us. Yeah. I think the only really relevant thing there is this part about the periapsis being outside the influence of the atmosphere. So the lowest point in our orbit, if that's within the atmosphere, then the atmosphere will drag us and the orbit will gradually shrink. We'll get closer to the planet. I think the 70,000 meter mark is considered outside of the orbit for Kerbin. So that's what we want to do. We want to always make sure the lowest point of our orbit is outside of that. Otherwise, we're in an unstable orbit that will decrease. So that's tutorial in doing. Let's see how much of that knowledge I absorbed, and we'll see how far we can get with a ground-up rocket. Let's jump into the vehicle assembly building and build our own. Right, this is the vehicle assembly building, or VAB, which is where we assemble vehicles to take us wherever we want to go. This is the parts picker. Yeah, we probably don't need this stuff. Good starting rocket has a command pod, an engine, and a fuel tank. And we can favourite stuff. Assembly is marked with the green icon when it's in your... The assembly marked with the green icon is your launch assembly. It's what goes out the door when you select launch. Right, so that's if we have like different sections that we're building side by side. use the engineer's report to see how your vehicle will perform. It will give you useful stats and a list of potential problems. For example, see if we have a thrust to weight ratio over 1, which means your vehicle will actually leave pad. More thrust than there is weight is what we want. Cool. Currently at 0. Over here is the trip planner. Use it to plot a destination and ensure your vehicle has the ability to get there. So for example, for Kerbin low orbit, it's telling us we need 3400, whatever that is, destination DV. Once you're ready to fly, select the launch button. As long as your vehicle fits completely within the VAB, it will be moved out, so we can't build bigger than this. Okay. Training center, yeah, sure. Alright, cool. Alright, so let's just do basically what the tutorial kind of did to get us up into space, and then hopefully establish a stable orbit. Let's see if I retained enough knowledge to do that. Right, so we want a command pod here. It's going to be doing the small stuff to begin with. So single Kerbin lives in there. We need a parachute, assuming we're going to land back on Kerbin? Kerbin? Yes. Kerbal, I think, is the star. Kerbin is the planet. Right. We then need a stage for kind of navigating in space. That's fuel. And then an engine that is small and is kind of good for making maneuvers and that sort of thing. So if we were already in space, this is what we would kind of be working with. Next stage is really get us to space. So we'll just follow the tutorial's lead to get a kind of reasonable size. Maybe even bigger than that. Maybe we want to go medium. That's really very large. Okay, yeah, let's stick small for now. Oh, and we need to consider staging here. Right, okay, so decouplers. Small decoupler. So if we do that, you can see in the bottom right here, we've only got our parachute stage at the moment, but this, once we add in here, adds it into our staging. So this is telling us if we just hit go right now, this wouldn't do anything because it's not part of our, whatever this is, launch assembly. But we would fire our main thruster and we would decouple at the same time. So that's not particularly good. We're going to have to toggle that. And then stage 2 would be parachute. Right. So we've got a decoupler there. We want the same thing here. And then we engine on this as well, which I think the same engine should work just fine for. Alright, so we've got that engine will fire first, then we'll decouple that once that's empty. We don't want that to fire at the same time that it decouples. We can, though, have that fire at the same time as we decouple this, so that's going to blow and that's going to start firing straight away. Then once that's empty, we'll decouple that, and then we'll float back down to Earth, or to Kerbin. This will definitely get us into space. I don't think we'll be able to do any orbital stuff with this, so should we go and do a quick test flight of this before we then give ourselves some more oomph? Or should we just go big? Let's go big. Let's right. So the other thing that we might want to do is add some solid fuel boosters, like of these here. To do that, we need these radial decouplers. So right, let's turn on symmetry mode 4. So long as these are in our first part and not attached to our second part, we should have no problems here. Engines, yes, solid fuel boosters. think this is one thing that I do struggle with a little bit, is when are they attached to the decoupler rather than attached to the rocket itself. You know what? Maybe we want to go with the slightly smaller ones here. Just again, sticking close to what we had in the tutorial. Those are attached nicely, which is good. And now, I don't think this would really stop us from getting to space, but the tops of these aren't very aerodynamic. So somewhere in here we have some caps. Nose cones. There we go. I think this will work pretty all right. Let's call it the Muck Polo one. You know what? Let's save it. We might want to reuse that later. I'm not sure about that overwriting. I think we can just try that. See if that works. No. Keep my name. To overwrite your existing vehicle build with the same name. Yes. Do. Okay. Alright, I think this bad boy is ready to go. Now let's check our staging before we go. So, yeah, we want main rocket and these to fire at the same time. They're going to burn out first, so then we're going to decouple those. Don't need this stage. We're then going to decouple our main fuel tank thing. I may have got myself a little confused here. Let's break that away. Break that away. Yes, that does have its own engine. Right. That gets us off the ground. Solid fuel burns out and we get rid. First stage liquid fuel thing burns out and we get rid, and then we fire our engine from here. And we're going to be maneuvering in space and stuff, and then that's going to burn out. We're going to do that. We're going to have coasted to space and be in an orbit of some kind, and then we'll have a parachute. I have a hunch, and that hunch is this is going to go one of two ways. We are either going to be absolutely fine and do everything we need here, or we're going to get an orbit going and then be completely stranded. Because if it takes all of our stuff there to establish a stable orbit, then we're not going to have any gas in the tank to direct ourselves back to the planet. But let's see what happens. Are we ready to fly? Here's a few pointers. This element is our flight cluster. It contains all of our flight controls and information. Cool. You can speed up and pause time. Yep. You can still move your camera and interact with part functions when you're paused. My experience with this so far has been that if you're in anything other than normal time, staging doesn't work. And I don't know if that's intended or not, but just to be on the safe side, I am going to try and remember to always come back to one-time speed before we try and stage. This is your staging stack. Yep. Cool. Alright, so thrust is at 100%. If we hit go, it's going to count us down. And then we'll, hopefully, go to space. We didn't blow up on the launch pad, so that's, you know, first, you know, potential point of failure. Well, I guess first point of failure is nothing turns on. So we're 2 for 2 here. Alright, so solid fuel engines burn faster and they're going to burn themselves down. Okay, nearly ready to go to our second stage. Cool. Oh, and we're above 10,000 meters, so we should be turning here now. We don't have a marker to lean towards. Let's just go for about 45 degrees. Probably want to turn a bit harder actually, because we were slightly late in starting to turn. See how that goes. This is going to burn out relatively soon. But, I mean, we are in space. I think I can cut that and still give us a little bit of fuel to work with here. Maybe we can do the first stage of our trying to establish orbit with what we've got. Alright, so we don't really need to do anything until we get to quite near our apoapsis. We do need to make sure that we are going to burn prograde when we get there. But I think it's worth keeping the additional stage there, so we've got a little bit more fuel, and then we've got what's in our kind of orbital maneuvering last stage of engine there to hopefully establish a nice stable orbit, and then maybe even cut ourselves short and get back home safely. That's the dream, right? Alright, so this is where the time warp really comes into its own. Like, we are just coasting here now. 110 kilometers up. We're going to coast with no further power needed. We're going to come up to about 150. One thing we can do is we can just click on the apoapsis here and time warp to this point. It speeds up time and then it automatically slows us, ready to maneuver. So I want to make sure that we're prograde, and we want to open up that throttle. Use that last little bit of fuel here. See, that's widening our arc. That's now dead, so we'll drop that stage, and then we're still burning on our last engine. And if I've done everything right here, we should get a stable orbit. Alright. Periapsis 33, so not what it needs to be. That's quite a funky orbit. That's above the atmosphere though. This we should be stable here, and we've got a little bit of fuel left as well. Alright, so let's speed up some time here. One thing it does, which is really neat, is when you get close to other stuff in space, is it will automatically slow you down if you're on a higher warp speed. You can see we can go up to 100 times here because we're far enough away from the planet that we're not going to collide. Now we're further away, so we can in fact go even faster. And then it automatically lowers our speed because we're getting a little bit closer to the planet. But I think this is big success. Our apoapsis 340,000 meters. That's probably higher than it needs to be. Periapsis 97,000. Let's just give it a couple of orbits and see if that stays stable. I think it should do. Yeah, I think we're good. We're literally orbiting the planet. If we go prograde, does that turn us in the direction of travel? I think it does. Oh, maybe this is like technically the direction of travel. Alright, cool. So the next thing really is, can we get ourselves home safe? Which is something I certainly haven't done much experimentation with. Let's come back to the map view here. So, periapsis is our lowest point. And I think what we need to do is be at our apoapsis and burn retrograde, burn away from the direction of travel, and that should shrink our orbit down and lower the periapsis. I think that is how it works. If we go ahead and face retrograde, as in away from the direction of travel here, when we burn, that's going to slow us down. We don't have much fuel left to do this. Let's try and make sure we time it right. So we're facing retrograde, going to burn. Ah, damn it. Throttle is locked while you're more than 1% warp. Right, okay. That did what I expected, so that cut our arc down now to the point where we're now going to collide with the planet, which is fine. That's intended. Yeah. Let's get ourselves round to there. Then my question is going to become, which way do we need to burn to come in safely? Or do we even need to? Do we need to do any burning at all? We probably don't, right? Because once we're inside the atmosphere, then we can just, you know, get rid of these stages and rely on our parachute to bring us down. We're burning retrograde. That would shrink our orbit so it would come in faster. So instead, if we go prograde... No? Yes? Oh, this stuff's confusing. What gives us the best chance of survival here? So it's got to be burning retrograde to slow ourselves, right? Even if that means we would shrink our orbit. One thing I know for sure is we don't want to be attached to this when we come down to the ground, because that's explosive, and most of the rest of what we're sitting on isn't really that explosive. Let's burn, yeah, and then get rid of that. And I think we're already in the upper atmosphere here, so I think we should just be able to wait it out. Probably need to position ourselves up, but unless, you know, heat shielding is a problem. With it being in early access, I know there's no graphics for, you know, atmosphere, fiery, bad friction from air right now, but I don't know if that means the mechanic isn't in yet. I think it's not. I think we're good. Ultimately, when we trigger our parachute, it's gonna come out the front here, and it's gonna, you know, force that side of the craft up in any case. But we don't want to suscept poor Bill here to more G's than is necessary. I'm gonna speed us up. We are actually within the safe region to deploy that parachute, so I'm going to go ahead and do that now. I think 2,000 to 20,000 is what it's kind of rated for. That will just trail. And apologies for the absolutely atrocious frame rate here. I think that's one part this game is not yet particularly optimized, and about 3 or 4 parts my rig is definitely showing its age. I think this is going to be the year for an upgrade. But I think, in terms of our first exploration here into space, we are going to come down safe and sound. Got about 5k left to go. We probably should have tried to ditch over the sea or something, but I'm sure it'll be fine. Yeah, that's the parachute fully opened up. That's going to slow our descent. We just got a kilometre left to go here, so I think we're all good. Well, look at his little face. He's amazed. He's a pioneer. He's done something that no Kerbal has ever done in this game, in this particular save file. What a hero. Alright, so that's gonna do it for episode 1 here. I feel like we learned some things, we put them into practice. I will be honest and say that I did at least get an orbit going in a trial run here before I started the stream. But it wasn't stable, and I certainly didn't leave myself any fuel to get back down to ground with. So this is genuinely great big success. So yeah, hope you enjoyed the first episode here. I do plan on doing more of this. I want to set us some challenges, some things that we might want to do within the game. And we'll probably dip in and out as well as it goes through its early access life cycle. So yeah, thanks for watching. If you did enjoy, then please do me a favour and click that like button and click that subscribe button for more content from this channel. And yeah, thanks for watching, and I will catch you on the next episode of Muko Plays Kerbal Space Program 2. Cheers all.